What were we talking about? Right, D&D. We played both games last week, the Dungeons and the Dragons. This is the campaign diary. It's Thursday, therefore you get a continuation of what's going on in my D&D game the Thursday before. If you're not caught up on the campaign diaries, I can't catch you up in this video, otherwise this video will be 4 hours long. But last week's episode was pretty spectacular, and so I'm keen to talk about it. In order to understand what happened last week in D&D, I need to rewind the clock a little bit and explain an encounter that happened early on in the game. When the players first recovered the Shield of Andrim, they didn't know what it was. They didn't know that it was this ancient artifact, this symbol of rulership. So they took it to the most trustworthy NPC they knew, a high-level wizard named Tace. Tace was the wizard of this barony they were in, the barony of Bedegar. Tace was loyal to the old baron, but the old baron was dead and his family apparently killed. They seek Tace out and they find him on the road in his Darren's Instant Fortress. So he's got a mobile tower, which I put in front of the players on purpose because I wanted them to see that there were items like this in D&D. I wanted them to go, wow, this guy has an instant tower. He has a Poke Tower. I want one of these things, which is maybe a lesson in itself. They ride up to the tower expecting to find Tace alone, but he's not alone. He has a guest with him. He has a knight. It's Lady Avelina. She's a knight of Dalrath. At this point in the game, the players don't know anything about Dalrath. They look at their map and they see that Dalrath is the barony to the north. There are 3 baronies on the map. There's Tor to the south, there's Bedegar in the middle, and Dalrath to the north. There's a picture of Lady Avelina over here. She's not incredibly happy to see these heroes. She's very suspicious of them because they look like mercenaries. Whereas Lady Avelina is a knight. She is of noble station, although pretty far down in the hierarchy. So she is initially suspicious of these heroes, but Tace, the wizard, knows them, has met them before, and says, no, let them in, let's have dinner together. And while they're having dinner, the heroes ask about these 2 items they found. They ask about Arcturus, the Sword of Stars, which is an elven artifact, and so Tace doesn't know much about it, and then they show him the Shield of Andrim. As soon as they reveal the shield, Lady Avelina stands up, points at the shield, and says, give that to me. She recognizes the shield and she knows its import. Far to the north, her lord, Baron Kenway of Dalrath, fights against all the creatures of the wilderness, against the elves, against the barbarian humans, against the orcs. And he has ambition. He wants to overthrow the invincible overlord, which he's probably not going to be able to do with just a barony. He needs more power than that. Lady Avelina correctly surmises that if Kenway of Dalrath had the Shield of Andrim, this ancient source of power, he could declare himself the king of Andrim, the king of this entire map. And people would flock to him. They would say, the king has returned. They wouldn't really care that he wasn't of noble. I mean, some of them would. There might be a war, right, to see who really gets to be the king of Andrim. But a lot of people would flock to whoever has this shield, especially if they are of noble birth. A lot of who rules and who doesn't rule is just down to who's audacious enough to give it a shot and capable of defending the title. And the Shield of Andrim would confer a lot of legitimacy and it would inspire a lot of people. Lady Avelina knows this. She demands the shield, but Tace says, no, let's be reasonable. Hang on, let's think about this for a second. We have on the throne of Bedegar, the barony we're in right now, an usurper who he claims that he killed the orcs who attacked the Baron's family and murdered them, but nobody believes him. So this usurper on the throne, Lord Saxton, if he got a hold of the Shield of Andrim, it would be bad. And Tace isn't really excited about giving the shield to another baron. He's not a member of the feudal hierarchy. He's a wizard. And so he says, no, let's, what are you heroes planning on doing? They say, well, we're planning on going into the swamp to kill a bunch of goblins in a mine. And Tace is like, okay, yeah, that sounds good to me. Why don't you guys go do that? And that way the Shield of Andrim will be in an obscure place with some people no one's ever heard of, and it won't be in any danger of falling into the wrong hands. Tace basically advocates that it's better that no one have this shield than somebody he doesn't know or trust. Lady Avelina is a knight, and Tace is not a nobleman, but he is older and powerful, and she defers to him. They're both members of this secret society, and Tace outranks her in it, and we kind of don't need to get into it. That would be an even longer story, oh my god. Lady Avelina defers to Tace, and the heroes get to keep the Shield of Andrim. Meanwhile, and this is tangentially related to what happened in the story Thursday night, the sword that they found, Arcturus, the Sword of Stars, is one of the teeth of the dragon, and Lady Serial, who is an evil vampire queen that used to be a heroic elven priest played by my friend Jess, wants that sword. She wants all the teeth of the dragon, but she knows where this one is. So throughout the campaign, while the heroes have been investigating these missing wizards, Tace went missing. As they're delving and trying to find out who's kidnapping all these spellcasters, Lady Serial is constantly sending minions of increasing power level to try to get this sword. Lady Serial, the vampire queen, is having a little bit of trouble getting the sword because every time she dispatches a minion to get it, the minion meets with some success, often ends up with the sword for a little while, but the sword belongs to Nicodemus, the Eldritch Knight. Eldritch Knights have the ability to take a weapon and make it their signature weapon, so that if it's anywhere in the world, if it's ever stolen from them, they can instantly recall it, and as long as it's on the same plane of existence, it will appear immediately in their hand. So the heroes have developed this ploy whereby they let the bad guys take the sword for a little while, and then they just wait, and Nicodemus calls it back to him. This frustrates Lady Serial. So now you're basically all caught up. As long as you've watched the early campaign diaries, I can't recap the whole thing. This video is already going to be long enough. When last we left our heroes, they had cleared out Brokenspire Keep, which is this keep in the middle of nowhere, north of Bedegar. It's not actually in the barony. And they found Lord Edmund of Bedegar. They found the 13-year-old son of the old baron, thought dead. So there's an usurper on the throne, and the heroes have the legitimate heir, and they're trying to figure out what to do with him. They don't want to go adventuring with this kid, but they ask the kid what he wants to do, and he's like, what do you mean, what am I going to do? I'm going to get my barony back. I'm going to ride north, I'm going to get a horse, and I'm going to go to my cousin. Cousin is a metaphorical term. I'm going to go to my cousin in the north, Lord Kenway of Dalrath, and I will demand aid. And because we are both barons, he will be obligated to help me. The heroes aren't super keen on the idea of letting Lord Edmund ride out on his own because he is the only evidence they have that Lord Saxton is not the regent, he's an usurper. And they hate Lord Saxton, for reasons detailed in the campaign catastrophe episode. So the heroes think about what to do, and they say, all right, look, don't go anywhere. Let us guard you for a little while, and we will write a note to Lord Kenway of Dalrath, the Baron of Dalrath. Graves the Warlock, played by my friend Phil, volunteers to have his owl Mojo take a written message north to Lord Kenway of Dalrath. So the kid composes a message saying, hey, my name is Lord Edmund. You may remember me. We met when I was 6, and I require your aid. Please respond. After 2 days, the owl returns with no reply, and the heroes are like, what is going on? And then Sai, the Elven Ranger, looks up and notices there's a hawk circling in the sky like 1,000 feet in the air, and after it circles the keep for a little while, it flies north. Of course, the heroes all realize this is Lord Kenway's hawk, though this is no normal hawk. Stay tuned. Midway through this process, the players see me texting on my phone, and they're like, what are you doing? Pay attention to the game. And I said, I am paying attention to the game. I am relaying all of your communications to Lord Kenway of Dalrath. He is another player in my game. He's my friend Aaron Contreras. Aaron and I both worked at Pandemic Studios, and we played a whole campaign together solo in Fantasy Grounds as he built up his character's backstory going to college in this great city of Capital. Then there was a whole other adventure with Aaron and my friends as he rode north to return to his homeland to reclaim his birthright because, again, there was an usurper on the throne. Power is fleeting in my world. When the heroes find out that this NPC they're negotiating with is actually a player character played by my friend, one of the players is like, oh, wow, that's amazing. This guy should be our ally. In fact, let's write him another note. Let's explain who we are. The note he got was just from Lord Edmund. He doesn't know that we are down here. He doesn't know that we've rescued him. So the heroes write a second note, having gotten no reply from Lord Kenway the first time, and the second note is from them. They introduce themselves because Lord Edmund's letter didn't say anything about them, and they basically download everything they've done in the campaign so far into this letter. Which was probably overkill, but some of the players come from a video gamey tradition where they're constantly afraid that they not only haven't said the right thing, that they haven't said everything, and that they need to say everything, right? They need to click on every dialogue option. They need to go through every branch of the dialogue tree, but there isn't a dialogue tree. They send the second message north with the owl, and 2 days later, the owl returns with no reply, and the heroes are like, what is going on? My friend Phil, after last Thursday's game, said, you know what, I bet that guy is just going to swoop down here with his army, and he's going to take over. He's going to see there's an usurper on the throne. The only legitimate heir is a 13-year-old kid, and he's just going to expand his territory and be the Baron of 2 baronies. Which, by the way, is exactly what Aaron said he was going to do on Thursday night when I was messaging him over Facebook. When he messaged me saying he wanted to move his army down south and basically take over this other barony, I said, okay, cool. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. And I didn't really know at that moment if I was going to let that happen in the actual other game. Like, from Aaron's point of view, that would be what his character was doing, but I'm perfectly happy with taking this one campaign with 2 groups in it and branching it into 2 campaigns with 2 groups in it, just so one group doesn't impinge on the other group's fun, if that makes any sense. But it also wasn't clear to me that Kenway doing this, Lord Kenway of Dalrath taking over Bedegar, would in any way impinge on the hero's fun. I just wanted to think about it, so I didn't try to talk him out of it. I just said, okay, that's cool. And the next morning when I woke up, I had a new message on Facebook. He goes like, I'm not going to do that. What I want to do instead is I just want to get Lord Edmund. I want to get him to safety. I want to get him up here to the north, and I want him to swear fealty to me. Ultimately, if I rescue this kid, not only does this kid owe me a favor, he owes me his barony, which is a perfectly legitimate way of looking at it and a very medieval feudal attitude. It was just really amusing to me that one of the players, when he found out that Kenway of Dalrath was he was a PC run by my friend Aaron, he was like, great, that's fantastic. We should ally with him. And meanwhile, my friend Phil is like, this is terrible. He's just going to he's going to see weakness and he's going to swoop down here and take over. And that was exactly what Aaron's first plan was. But now he just wants to get Edmund to safety. He wants Edmund in his court and protected. And ultimately, he wants Lord Edmund working for him. He kind of has aspirations to become a duke. And remember, he knows nothing about the Shield of Andrim. No one has said anything about that yet. So I tell Aaron, listen, you've got 3 knights, the Knights of the Coals, and you can send one of them on a mission to go get Lord Edmund. The other 2 will be on a mission themselves. The 3 knights are Sir Holkar, the spy. I said, if you send Sir Holkar, you will get the best and most accurate information about what's going on in Bedegar. Sir Venin, the diplomat, who is the most well-spoken and also the best at negotiation. He will get you the best deal with Lord Edmund. And there was a point where Aaron was planning on just sending a knight south to guard Lord Edmund and kind of take care of him, but then he changed his mind and said, no, bring him north. And at that point, sending Sir Venin, the diplomat, was probably not that important. The 3rd knight is Lady Avelina, the commando, and I say she is the most likely to return Edmund unscathed. So of course, Aaron sends Lady Avelina, and this is before the second message got to him, so neither he nor anyone in his court understood that there were these rat catchers, there were these mercenaries that had found Lord Edmund. All they knew was what Lord Edmund had told them, and he hadn't mentioned these heroes. The Baron of Dalrath sends his knight Lady Avelina south to Bedegar to retrieve Lord Edmund, and then he gets this second message from the owl. He sends the owl back without a response, but sends his hawk with a response. When the second owl returns with no message, my friend Phil is like, Matt, tell your friend Aaron he's a weenie. I don't think he actually used the word weenie, but this is a G-rated channel. Only a few hours after the second owl returned, the hawk comes back and alights on the parapets. Parapets? Crenellations? I don't remember. Graves the Warlock walks up to this hawk and inspects it. The hawk doesn't try to get away, it doesn't make any movement to leave, and so Graves looks closely at it and discovers it is a mechanical hawk. It's all carved, polished wood and gemstones. Graves says, "Hello?" The hawk kind of looks at him and opens its mouth, and a voice comes out. It's a recorded voice. It's the voice of Lord Kenway of Dalrath, and he says, "Congratulations to the heroes, they've done an amazing job. He is going to take Lord Edmund off their hands and escort him safely to the north and protect him there." All of these things are true, by the way. He says he's going to send an escort south to retrieve Lord Edmund, and I use that phrase on purpose because I didn't want the heroes to be thinking of who was going to be sent. I thought an escort would sound like a group of people, and that is indeed what they concluded. The heroes are like, fantastic. All we have to do is wait 3 days for the escort to show up and we can finally get rid of this kid, and then we can continue on our adventure into the Underdark to find out who's been kidnapping all these spellcasters. 3 days goes by and laborers from Gravesford are arriving at the keep to help renovate it, and I had a lot of fun playing these NPCs, not all of whom are incredibly bright. I asked the heroes how they're going to live in this keep. How are they going to find food? What watches are they going to take? Where are they going to sleep? The players have cleared out the keep, so I gave them my map. I gave them the DM's map of the keep, and they start looking at the map and going, oh, I want to sleep here. What room is this? I want to sleep here. They set up a system of watches, so there's always somebody in the watchtower and somebody in the guard tower, and the druid and the ranger are able to forage for food easily and provide enough food for everybody. This is a fighter's keep, so eventually using the training equipment in the keep, Nicodemus, the half-orc fighter, is able to use Wound, the two-handed great axe of Bonebreaker Doricor, one-handed. I give him the feat Iron Hand, which means he can use a two-handed weapon one-handed, which I do kind of because it's an orcish weapon and he is half-orcish. And it's one of the things I like to do to make players feel special is to give them unique things. So there isn't really a feat that does this in 5th edition. But there was in an earlier edition, so I just co-opted that. Now Nicodemus is able to wield Wound in one hand and the Shield of Andrim in the other, which means he doesn't need Arcturus the Sword of Stars anymore, which is fine because he couldn't use it anyway. Every time he tried to, it was shocking him because he's a half-orc and it's an elven blade, and elves do not like orcs. So everybody in the party says, well, why don't you give the weapon to the elf ranger? And the elf ranger is like, well, I don't know that I really want it. I'm a ranged character. Yeah, they say, but if you use the belt of giant strength, then you'll be just as effective in melee as you would be at range, and you can unlock the powers of the sword. You're an elf. Matt Alpert, Sai's player, likes this idea. He's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that. Let's figure that out. So now Sai, the Elven Ranger, is going to become a melee character. He's going to go sword and board. He's going to have a shield, and he's going to wield in his other hand Arcturus, the Sword of Stars. This is an important point. Stay tuned. While they're living in the keep and we're kind of establishing what their daily life is, Keck, the Dwarven War Priest, says, I'm going to go down to the temple in the lower level and I'm going to reconsecrate it to Ord, the god of the dwarves. I said, okay, that's going to take a couple of days, and there's a ritual that involves sand and stone and crystals, gemstones, but you guys have access to all those things. You have plenty of gemstones now because you got all the treasure from the bad guys. And so I point out that over the course of days, while Keck is down there chanting and performing this ritual to deconsecrate this temple to Saint Ajax, who is, by the way, a living mortal, which is kind of sacrilege, and reconsecrate it to Ord, the immortal god that created the earth, Lord Edmund comes by and watches Keck doing all this and asks him what god he prays to. And my friend TJ playing Keck kind of proselytizes to the kid, and he goes, I serve Ord, the god of the earth, the god of strength, the god of stone. This world you live in is called Orden. It is named after Ord. Lord Edmund thinks about this and goes away, and the next day he comes back and he watches Keck some more. He talks to Keck some more about Ord and about what Ord stands for. Keck explains that Ord is a god of law, Ord is a god of justice. Lord Edmund says there was a church to St. Llewellyn in my town, but it was destroyed before I was born. Now it is just a ruin. Keck says, I know, I have been there. Lord Edmund explains that Ajax, the invincible overlord, has outlawed all organized religion, but he makes an exception for the gods of the dwarves and the elves. Now this has heretofore not been an issue because the elves and dwarves are at odds with the humans. Lord Edmund thinks and says there can be no organized religion to the gods of men under the thumb of Ajax the Invincible, but I think the people of Bedegar would benefit from having a temple to Ord. Don't you? And TJ starts smiling and goes, absolutely I do. And Edmund nods and kind of walks away. That is the state of things. There are now peasant laborers at the keep. The heroes have a watch system worked out when the Wraith attacks in the middle of the second night. Sai, the ranger, is on watch, and Graves is in the tower asleep. He's been using the tower as his kind of wizard's tower. This Wraith floats through the wall of the second floor of the tower and reaches out for Sai. He attacks Sai, the Elven Ranger, does a ridiculous amount of damage to him and says, surrender the blade. Of course, Sai recognizes the red glowing symbol in the forehead of the Wraith, which means this is a minion of Lady Serial. right? This is that meanwhile back at the ranch plotting where you've got one subplot ticking along and you switch to another subplot to keep things interesting. Sai, the Elven Ranger, takes a ridiculous amount of damage from this Wraith and fails his Constitution check, so now his hit point total is permanently reduced by that amount of damage. He is now walking around with a maximum of 10 hit points. And of course, everybody at the table, even though they fought Wraiths before, they've forgotten. They're like, permanently reduced? And I'm like, well, as far as you know, right? Of course, in the rules, it says that after a long rest, everything's taken care of, but I don't mind them freaking out a little bit. I then tell the players something they had no real way of knowing, but I suspected, and I think I was correct, that if I don't tell them this, they are going to fight to the death and they're going to end up screwed. I explained to them that someone who takes damage this way from a Wraith and is reduced to 0 hit points is instantly killed and brought back as a Spectre. That had the intended effect, and suddenly the party's attitude toward this entire battle changed a lot, and Matt, playing Sai the Elven Ranger, had to think really hard about what he wanted to do. I mean, what he wanted to do was just keep attacking, and if he went unconscious, it was no big deal. But now he was not happy. He was starting to feel as though, first of all, this was an incredibly unfair encounter. There were only 2 of them in the tower. One of them was asleep, and suddenly a Wraith shows up. Which, in a sense, is true. It wasn't fair. This isn't a war game with balanced sides. This is a role-playing game in which my job as the DM is to make sure that what is plausible occurs. Plausible and dramatic, I should say. And this was entirely plausible. This is exactly what Lady Sarah would be doing, and it was certainly dramatic. Sai the Elven Ranger is now 10 hit points away from being instantly killed permanently if he fails a saving throw. His player, Matt Alpert, is really unhappy about this situation because he feels like this is nonsense. I was given this sword. It's the only really cool thing I've gotten in this campaign, and now Matt Colville, the DM, is taking it away from me. Which, of course, is not how I think about it. I'm not doing anything. Lady Serial is doing it. I know that sounds like sophistry, but that's how I have to think in order to play the bad guys in a plausible manner. I spend a lot of my time thinking about what the bad guys would do in a plausible and dramatic fashion because I'm not super worried about balanced encounters. I have found in my DMing experience that the more I challenge the players, the more they respond. They rise to the level of challenge. So even though I had no idea how they were going to get out of this situation, there was only one player, really. Graves was asleep, dealing with this Wraith, and this Wraith was probably going to kill him. But I suspected they would figure something out, and they did. It wasn't the bravest thing in the world. Sai, the Elven Ranger, throws Arcturus, the Sword of Stars, on the ground and runs. He doesn't run because he's a coward. He runs because he's trying to get all the other members of the party together so they can fight this Wraith and get the sword back. He's gambling that the Wraith will go for the sword, and the Wraith does. But at this point, Graves has woken up, and Graves is like, no, you don't. You're not getting away. There's no real danger that Lady Serial is going to get this weapon because even though Sai the Elven Ranger is now using it, it is still the bound weapon of Nicodemus. He hasn't changed his signature weapon from the sword to the axe yet. So everyone knows if it comes down to it, Nicodemus can just use his ability to instantly teleport the sword back into his hand, but the players don't want to use that ability too much. They don't want Lady Serial to figure out why all her bad guys are failing. So Graves says, no, you don't. You're not getting away. And he uses Witch Bolt on the Wraith. The Wraith is at the uttermost limit of the Witch Bolt's range, but it hits. Now Graves, the Warlock, and the Wraith are connected with this arcane tendril. Every round from now on, Graves is going to do a d12 damage to this Wraith. So the Wraith turns around and comes back and attacks him, and Graves is like, no problem, bring it on. At this point, the other heroes in the party have gone up to the tower and start fighting the Wraith themselves, and they're able to destroy the Wraith. No one got turned into a Spectre. All's well that ends well. So in the moment, it seemed unfair. It seemed like this is nonsense. Why are we fighting? Why is one character facing off against a Wraith? When pressured, they came up with a plan and they solved that problem and they got to keep the sword. That was the only combat of the evening. The rest of the night was all role-playing. Because the next day, the escort for Lord Edmund shows up. The heroes on watch see that there's a knight standing at the edge of the clearing and she has a dog with her. She's come down from the south with some sort of hound. Upon closer inspection, it's a hellhound. It's not just a regular hellhound, it looks massive. It's like a giant Rottweiler hellhound. Graves, who's on watch, has never met this knight before because Phil's old character Scaros, who had met this knight, has died. So Graves, who's on watch in the guard tower, opens the doors to the keep and says, we've been expecting you, come in. At this point, the other heroes show up and they're like, it's Lady Avelina. Lady Avelina looks around, sees Nicodemus, says nothing, but the wheels start spinning. Nicodemus does not have the Shield of Andrum on display. Anytime he's not in combat, it's over his back and it's covered in black cloth. The heroes invite Lady Avelina in and they start talking to her about everything that's happened since the last time they saw her. They mentioned how Tace has gone missing and she's like, well, that's a problem. Or what are you guys going to do about it? And they're like, we're going to go find him as soon as we can get this kid off our hands. And she's like, okay, go produce the kid. Nicodemus has an NPC follower. He's got a knight, Sir Arkazovar, the Dragonborn Paladin, a member of Good King Omen's Dragon Phalanx. They send Sir Arkazovar to go fetch Lord Edmund from below. Lord Edmund sleeping in one of the stately rooms below the keep. While Sir Arkazovar is going to fetch Lord Edmund, the players are all negotiating with Lady Avelina, trying to find out what she knows, and she's trying to find out what they know and what they've done. And she's explaining this whole conspiracy on the part of Lord Saxton, which she's not super interested in. She's from the north. They have bigger problems. This is another one of those situations where the heroes, one or two specifically, who came up in video games and have never played any kind of role-playing game before, are trying to download every single thing that has ever happened to them into Lady Evelina's brain because they're afraid they're not going to say they're afraid they're not going to give Lady Evelina some critical piece of information that would unlock some usefulness on her part. Which I'm not sure is the best idea. Lady Evelina is not on their side. Lady Evelina is on Lord Kenway of Dalrath's side. She's a knight of Dalrath. She's not anti-Bedegar, she's just pro-Dalrath. So the game kind of slows down a little bit as one of the players tries to basically info dump the entire campaign into Lady Evelina's head. And the heroes are trying to position themselves as, look, we did this, we saved this kid, we've proven that Lord Saxton isn't a regent, he's an usurper. But Lady Evelina wisely says, wait a minute, why did you attack this keep? What did you expect to find? And they're like, well, we're looking for Tace, we're trying to find the wizards who've been kidnapped. And she's like, so you had no idea Lord Edmund was here? Right, she's trying to recast the events of what's happened in a way that it makes the heroes look slightly less heroic. Why would she do that? Because she perceives them as mercenaries, and from her point of view, they're kind of trying to sell themselves as the saviors of Bedegar. But she's pointing out, you guys are doing good work. You're trying to find these missing wizards, but that's because they're friends of yours. You had no idea what was going on politically. You didn't know this kid existed, and now that you found him, you're kind of trying to offload him. So from your point of view, I'm sure what you're doing is very heroic, but from Lady Evelina, who is a knight's point of view, these guys are just behaving like mercenaries. And to their credit, some of the other heroes are like, look, we've never claimed otherwise. Finally, Sir Arkazovar arrives with Lord Edmund. Lord Edmund walks in the room and says, Lady Evelina. Lady Evelina rises, she bows, she greets Lord Edmund formally. She says, Lord Edmund, I have been sent by your cousin to the north to escort you safely to Dalrath. This is what I have sworn to do, and this is what I intend to do. But there has been a complication. At this point, EJ, Nicodemus's player, goes, oh, great. Lord Edmund says, what complication? Remember, he's a 13-year-old boy. Lady Evelina points at Nicodemus and says, I require the shield of Andrim. To which EJ responds, okay, here we go. Lady Evelina believes that the shield is better off in the north, and the players know this. They've already met her once and gone through this process. But that was back when Tace is around, and in fact, Sai the Elven Ranger says, wait a minute, Tace told you to leave the shield with us, and she says, where is Tace now? The heroes say, well, we're trying to find him, and Lady Evelina says, yes, little good you've done trying to protect him thus far. Nicodemus says, I'm not giving up the shield. Lord Edmund's looking around saying, what shield? What are you people talking about? Graves the Warlock takes a second to explain, well, it's this important artifact shield thing that we found. This is not an answer that satisfies Lord Edmund. Lady Evelina takes a step forward and says, you would find me a dour enemy. EJ says, well, if that's how it's going to be, but I ain't giving up the shield. The heroes have no idea what level Lady Evelina is, but they know she's higher level than they are, and she has the Hound of Dalrath, which is this ancestral hellhound that Lord Kenway inherited from his father and his father before him. That's all part of Kenway's backstory, which is too elaborate to go into here. As it looks like a fight is imminent, Lord Edmund says, wait, no, tell me, what is this shield? The heroes are kind of ignoring him, so I have Sir Arkazovar, Nicodemus's knight, say, it is an ancient shield, a powerful artifact and a symbol of rulership. Whosoever holds the shield would be rightwise king of Andrim. Lord Edmund looks to Nicodemus and says, do you have this shield? Nicodemus says, it's not important, kid. Sir Arkazovar says, show it to him. Because, of course, Sir Arkazovar is a knight and doesn't believe in deception, Nicodemus trusts his knight, and so reveals the Shield of Andrim to Lord Edmund. This is the first time Lord Edmund has seen the Shield of Andrim. He is well educated, but he's not a historian. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't understand its provenance, but it's obvious that it's important, and he understands what Sir Arkazovar has told him. Lord Edmund says, is this the shield you're after? And Lady Evelina says, yes, it belongs in Dalrath. Lord Kenway needs it. She explains that Dalrath is besieged on all sides, and she requires the shield. Remember, this is not something my friend Aaron knows anything about because no one has communicated all these details to him. Nobody in the north knew that these mercenaries were the ones who had the Shield of Andrim when they were communicating with them saying, hey, we found this kid. Lady Evelina takes another step forward and demands the shield once again and says, I will not ask a third time. Nicodemus says, you don't gotta ask a third time because you're not getting the shield. Lord Edmund is thinking, you can see the wheels spinning in his head, and he says, Nicodemus, there are peasant laborers here working on the keep. Nicodemus says, yeah? Lord Edmund says, they are currently under your care in your charge. Were you attacked, would you defend them? Nicodemus says, of course I would. They're here working for me. They're living on my land. Of course I would defend them. Lord Edmund says, to what extent would you go to keep them safe? Nicodemus looks at Sir Arkazovar, looks back at Lord Edmund and says, I would go to any length to protect them. They are peasants on my land. Lord Edmund nods and says, Nicodemus, there is a tradition among the barons of Andrim. Lady Evelina takes a step forward, puts her hand on her sword and says, Lord Edmund, do not interfere. Lord Edmund says the barons were empowered to award their companions a special title. The title comes from the old word for companion, compt. Nicodemus, do you swear to protect the peasants on your land and defend the barony of Bedegar with your life? Nicodemus says, yeah, I swear. Lord Edmund says, Nicodemus, this land was once known as the region of Rend. I pronounce you, Nicodemus, the Count of Rend. This is Lord Edmund's master stroke. He turns to Lady Evelina and says, now demand the shield from him. This is your test, Lady Evelina. Nicodemus is a count in my court, and you are on his land, and therefore, as a bonded knight, you owe him service. Are you a loyal knight, or are you a mercenary in noble's armor? The players are like, holy crap, what is going on? They start talking about what all this means, about what Lady Evelina is going to do, which is, of course, what I wanted them to do. It's the reason I got up to go get a soda. I came back, I sat down, I looked at the heroes, and I said, Lady Evelina says, very well. And with that, the tension was resolved. We had our moment of crisis, we had all the good things the story needs, and the players were like, that is amazing, Nicodemus is now a count. Sir Archozovar, the Dragonborn Paladin, is now beaming with pride because now he serves a count. Lady Evelina defers to Lord Edmund and kind of swallows her pride and says, I'm ready to leave whenever you are, my lord. Right, you can tell she's seething, you can tell she feels like she's been beaten, but she is a loyal knight, she is a member of the feudal system, and she's going to do what the Baron says, she'll do what Nicodemus says. Now it's basically the end of the night. Lady Evelina is going to take Lord Edmund north, and before Lord Edmund leaves, he kind of charges all the heroes. He says, Keck, do not forget that once I'm restored, I require a temple to Ord in my city. Lord Edmund turns to Graves and says, Master Warlock, and Graves bows and says, my lord. Edmund says, I require my wizard, Tace. Please fetch him. Graves says, as you will, my lord. It was, of course, their plan all along. And that's where we ended things. I gave EJ some homebrew rules I have for how to run a country, how to raise armies, how to, improve a fortification. The first thing you have to do is going to pick what kind of ruler you're going to be. You're either going to be a noble, you're going to be a warlord, or you're going to be a despot. And he picked warlord. I like warlord. Warlord doesn't have any negative connotation to it. It just means you're going to be primarily concerned with raising an army and waging war. It could mean war for the good guys. It could mean war for yourself. I will someday get these rules written up and in a nice manner and put them up on the DM's Guild. Now, this whole thing is kind of risky, and I'm not always sure I can pull it off when it happens, but I asked the players afterwards, and I could kind of tell at the table that they were caught up in what was happening. They were excited to see the outcome. They thought Nicodemus becoming a count was super cool. They thought it was a great resolution to this whole storyline. The reason I was worried, though, is because a lot of the drama you just saw had nothing really to do with the players. The players weren't driving it forward. I've played in games where the players were the ones who were actively driving the story forward, but those tend to be more theatrical players, if that makes any sense. Remember all the player types? Those tend to be actors more, the characters who want to take center stage and be the star of the show. But most of the players I've played with in my life are happy doing cool stuff, rolling dice, killing orcs, and seeing this amazing story play out. And so it ends up being kind of my responsibility to make sure that these dramatic moments are happening. On the one hand, it is problematic because it's just a bunch of NPCs talking to each other. But on the other hand, I could tell the players liked it. I could tell they got a kick out of it, and they were talking about it all the next day. We all work together, so I can kind of tell when things are working based on, are the players talking about it the next day? I'm not sure I can recommend to a novice DM running a game like that where it's just these NPCs doing all this cool stuff and the heroes are kind of passively watching. But remember that the fate of Lord Edmund was important to these players, and the fact that Nicodemus got made a count makes it super cool, I think, from their point of view. I mean, how else is that guy going to become a count, right? And the players got to see a bunch of cool politics happen, and now this is them going from being, novices in the realm of politics to being experienced. They've now seen this stuff play out. They understand a lot more about the feudal system in my world, and now they have a member of that feudal system in the party with them. Nicodemus is now Count Nicodemus of Rend. Now I have to make a new map. I have to zoom in a little bit and show the players their local area and show them where Rend is. It's a territory. It was not 100% part of Bedegar. Part of it extends into Bedegar. Gravesford is in Rend, but part of it extends outside of Bedegar. So in a certain sense, this is Lord Edmund expanding his territory. Nicodemus is going to spend a bunch of money and he's going to renovate this keep, but eventually he's going to have to defend it, right? He has the title of a count and he has a keep, but it's a dilapidated keep. He hasn't restored it yet. And once he does restore it, someone's going to come and try to take it from him. Maybe that will be somebody in Bedegar who resents the fact that he's been made a count when there are no other counts. This is an ancient tradition that's been long ignored. Or maybe it'll be some orcs or some bad guys from the wilderness that resent the idea of this part of the wilderness being taken from them. But one way or the other, he has the title. Now the question is, can he keep it? Once he's defended the keep, then he gets all the benefits of being a lord with a stronghold. For which, see the supplement I will eventually put up on the DM's Guild. And it'll be fun to see what it's like for EJ to play Nicodemus as a count. He is a nobleman now. He's a half-orc nobleman. I'm sure a lot of the people he meets, if he says, I'm the Count of Rend, are going to be like, what's Rend? Right? Rend is an ancient territory. There hasn't been a Count of Rend in like 1,200 years. EJ might say, well, the Baron of Bedegar made me the Count of Rend. And he was like, you mean Teobald? Teobald's been dead for months. And he's going to be like, no, I mean Lord Edmund. And they're like, who's Lord Edmund? You mean Teobald's son? He was murdered by the orcs. And of course, the heroes will say, no, he wasn't. Oh, wait, we sent him to the north. The only person who knows that Nicodemus is the Count of Rend is gone and cannot witness what happened. When the players figured this out, I was like, that's what you get for not having a bard in the party. In my setting, bards are super important. If knights are the muscles of feudalism, bards are kind of the nervous system. The nobleman might say this is the new law, but then it's up to the bards to spread that around and make sure that people know about it. Bards certify the law. There are technically, therefore, a couple of elements to this noble claim. There's the fact that the Baron of Bedegar, the rightful Baron of Bedegar, made Nicodemus the Count of Rend. So he is the Count of Rend to anyone who is super into the feudal system. But on the other hand, if you can't keep it, the fact that it's legitimate doesn't matter. So he has to defend it against the coming army. What army it is, I don't know yet. But also the fact that nobody saw it is important, right? The law has to be witnessed, and that's what the bards are for, and the players do not have a bard. They don't even know one. As opposed to the players in my Tuesday night group who do know a bard, so their story is told all throughout the land, and they're considered heroes, and they're trusted by the people. These heroes are still suspicious. Everywhere they go outside of Gravesford, they saved that town. Everywhere else they go, they're like, who are you guys? And that was the end of book 1. The heroes had successfully uncovered the plot against Lord Bedegar. They had cleared out Broken Spire Keep. They discovered where all these wizards were being taken. They were taken below. They now had the keys necessary. They had gotten one from Bonebreaker Dorocor. They had gotten one earlier in the campaign. They were now able to unlock the Black Gate and go below. Lady Evelina takes Lord Edmund north, and that's the end of D&D last Thursday night. Long story. I hope it was worth listening to. Remember, we're going to do another stream on Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we're going to continue making the map we started last week in Hexographer. That was a super big success. Lots of people online on Twitter have been sending me the maps they've been making. I think we got about halfway done with the map last time. We had almost 1,000 people in Twitch chat. I don't know if we'll have that many again this time. Maybe we'll have more, maybe we'll have less. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it. I'm looking forward to finishing the map, which we might do this Sunday. It might take one more Sunday after that. So come by the Twitch channel on Sunday. I'm /Matt Colville on Twitch. I'm /Matt Colville at Twitter. As always, there are no ads. I don't have a Patreon. If you want to help support the channel, please come by my Amazon page. There's a link in the doobly-doo. I am an independent fantasy author. I have 2 books out. I'm working on the 3rd book. Each book is $4 on Kindle, of which I see $3. So if you buy both books, you're throwing me $6. And every little bit counts. I have my eye on a better camera, by the way, but it is not cheap. Next Monday, we'll have an episode for the players called Welcome to D&D, in which we explain what a player should expect when they sit down to play D&D for the first time. Until then, peace out.